All right, in this unit we're going to start talking about databases and in particular web-driven, websites driven with databases. You can also use databases in a lot of desktop applications and even mobile phone applications. And much of this material will carry over to those applications. In fact, it's generally easier to use databases on those applications. So we're going to focus on the web, because that's where we see the most common applications and some of the more common challenges. Almost every big website out there is driven by a database. Everything from Facebook to Google, any website that tracks purchases or products, that stuff is stored in a database. Any website that has comments or user-controlled content is in a database. So let's look. First, we're going to look a little bit at databases. Now, we're going to be using some SQL, but we're not going to be teaching SQL here. We're going to assume that you remember some of the SQL from the database modeling course, the CIS 3107 course. But most of the SQL we'll be using is very, very basic. And if you don't remember that, you should be able to pick it up very easily with just a couple quick tutorials. So let's look at how we can use databases. There's a number of different ways to access databases, and let's set up the publisher database, which is the main practice database in this unit. So first we're going to bring up a couple new windows. One is the Server Explorer and then the SQL Server Object Explorer. Both of these windows on my computer show up on the left-hand side, and I can go between them. Once we get up a database open and running, we'll see it over here in servers. But right now I don't see any database connections because I don't have any live connections with this project I have open. So Server Explorer will be used some of the time, but sometimes you're looking, you won't see the database connections because you will not have established those yet. SQL Server Object Explorer will tie into your SQL Server. With Visual Studio is installed an Express edition of Microsoft SQL Server. The SQL Server is the main database engine, and this is just a stripped down quick version of this, but it has lots of potential. In my instance, I have two versions of it. Both are what referred to as the local database, but one's products and one's V11. This is just the version number. Depending on how you install Visual Studio and SQL Server, it might appear as one way or the other. And in fact, I'll provide links in the notes here, so if you don't see any SQL Server here or any local databases, you can download and install a free version of Microsoft SQL Server. Inside here we'll see some databases, and under databases, system databases we don't touch. They're used to run the database itself. But you'll see some other databases, like here I've got a coffee database, a product database. Here I have the pubs database, and this is the publisher database, which we'll be using a lot. It's a Microsoft standard database. It has a set of tables. It has some authors, employees, publishers, sales, titles, information about the publishing industry, and and I can actually go in and see there's some data in here, not a lot, but I can right click on one of these things, go view data, and see some of the data that populates this information. I can also, if I just let's try this again, double click on this, I can view the code that is used to design this and set this up. So this is the layout of the database. Let's give myself a little more space here. These are the fields. This one is a key field. This is the data type. This uses, if you're used to like Microsoft Access, a little different format. varchar is a common text field, and then the number of text fields are in there, character, bit, integer. So they're standard stuff, and then we can say whether or not we allow null. So some of these things are required and some of these are not required. And here's the actual SQL used to create this table down here. so we can see what was actually used to create the table. So that's the database in SQL Server, and this is actually should be stored as an MDF file. Not Microsoft Access stores things in an MDB file. This should be an MDF file. By default on my computer, it's on the C drive underneath users. This is the user I'm logged into, and inside that folder is just the pubs MDF file there, and that's the file that's working there. Now, if you don't have that file there, you can create it relatively easily. In your project here, there's an SQL file that has all the commands to create this. So it's instantiate pubs inst pubs.sql, and it's this file. So I can take that. So one way to do it is I can copy it, highlight it all and copy it, and then go over to my database, and if I right click on one of the tables over here, I can create a new query. So I can go over here and create a new query, and in the query I can paste in all the commands here. So again, this is really long. It's creating all the fields and everything. And then it will actually, inside the database, I can usually select what tables and database I will run against, but this one actually will switch to the right database here. So let's see if I can get up to the top. Yeah. So it checks if there's a pubs database and deletes it if necessarily. It then creates the pubs database and uses that, and then creates the tables in there. So all this should work. And I can just hit the execute button and it should run and create the database. In fact, that's what I did to create this pubs database. And I can't do it again because I've already done it once on this machine. And you can also, if you double click on the instance pubs database, run that, and I think that'll run similarly. I haven't had a chance to run it by just clicking on it, but I think if you also just click on this in the project and run it, it should create the database also. Now there's another way of creating, if you're having trouble with your SQL Server, you can, and where those files are located, we can also create a database. Let me close this for now and make this a little bigger. We can also create a local copy of the database file in our project if we want. But it only works with certain types of projects. So if I right click here and choose to add an item, add a new item, this project that the TextWorks created was created used as a website and not an ASP.NET forms page. So on most places I would be able to go in here and create a database. So let me show you how to do that in just a sec here. I'm going to close this project and open up a new project. I'm going to create a new project and make sure I do a Windows form. I'm not going to do a website. So like I say, I'm not going to do a website. So when I did this, I did new project, not new website, new project. And then within that, I'm going to go to web and just do an empty project. And I'm just going to call it CIS 3049 database test. And now with this project, again, I can still view and access my SQL Server information. If I go with the SQL Server, that stuff is still there. But I can also create a local copy of the database. So now if I right click over here, I can choose this add new item and get a whole list of new items including data elements, and I can go to create a SQL Server local database. There's also, and once this is a compact one and this is a normal one. The compact one, we're actually going to use this one. It's an MDF file. This is even a smaller version of SQL Server that's designed to run on smartphones and small environments like that. It also can run on websites. but I'm just going to choose this, and I'm just going to call this the pubs MDF. Add this. It gives me a warning and says it should be placed in an app data folder, and I want to say yes. So rather than just putting it in the main website, it'll put it in the apps data folder. So here's the apps data folder, and here's the MDF file that we're looking at. So now once I have this open, I can double click on it or right click and choose open, and it will open it up in Server Explorer, not necessarily in Microsoft. Let's see, what was that called again? The SQL Server Object Explorer opens it up in this Server Explorer. So sometimes it's confusing. They're slightly different views. But once I hear the same sort of stuff, I can view the tables, and there's no tables. So I can actually add a table here or a new query. And I could add my query information here. So now I can actually go in and create tables here. I brought up the query here that I've used before so I can see what the tables are. And I'm going to create a new table. So now I'm just going to specify create table and specify the information here, the different fields that I want to create. So again, I can go through here and create this table manually, just selecting the different values I want, typing in the different fields that I want to recreate this table if I want. So again, you can create, besides doing queries, you can create these tables by hand. And then one more thing I want to do, this identity, I want this to be like an auto-generated key. So I'm going to go down to properties here, have that field selected, and set the identity to true. And that'll help me, because I'm just going to show you how to enter data in the table next. So now I'm going to run the update and update this table. It's going to create the script, hopefully get the script all ready to go. It's creating the authors table. I'll say update database, and hopefully I should see the authors table showing up here. So I just have to remember, if I want to see it, I'm going to hit right click on the database, hit refresh, and I should see the authors table now that I've created here. And again, now I can go through here and I can say show table data. And I could enter some information into this authors table. And fill this information out. And again, the ID field's automatically generated, so I just have to fill in the other information. So that's a local table. Again, it's stored here, and we'll at times use that. And then we'll also look at using these SQL Server tables and using those at times. And each one will connect to a little differently. So next we'll talk about connecting up to these different types of tables.